Welcome to This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief. I'm Loryn Denise, just your average millennial out here trying to have a conversation about a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about. It's important to know that grief doesn't just happen when you lose someone. It can happen at any moment in your life. And it doesn't have to be all bad. It can actually be a really beautiful process. And as a millennial who had to process our own grief, I knew it was important to bring a more lighthearted, fresh perspective and create a safe space to discuss a topic that is typically uneasy. As I always like to say, we like to talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief, starts now. Welcome back, my loves. Welcome back. Thank you guys for joining. If you're just joining for the first time, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. And if you're joining me again, welcome back. You know, nothing but love. Thank you guys so much for just continuing to be here on my journey. And so today we're going to be diving into the grief of being a caregiver. I thought it was really It made a lot of sense to kind of piggyback off of Stephanie's episode talking about estate planning and caregiving because they kind of go hand in hand. And so you may be like, oh, I'm not a caregiver, so I don't really need to listen to this episode. But I'm going to talk about why it's important to even have conversations about caregiving. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about some, what it looks like caregiver stress and fatigue, because it is a real life thing. And then just some tips on how to be a great caregiver if you ever are in that role. If you're in that role currently, and then some tips for you, the caregiver yourself, to take care of yourself, because it really is important when you are a caregiver to take care of yourself. I have kind of been in the role twice. I'll say 2.5 times. Like really the main time was with my dad and, taking care of him when he was transitioning. And then the second time was my dad and my sister had a kidney transplant. My sister gave my dad one of her kidneys. And so I was the caregiver for them during that time of their recovery. And then with my mom, my dad was the main caregiver, but I did help him out a lot as well. And so I know all about it. Okay. I know all about the caregiver fatigue. I know about the caregiver stress, all of that good jazz that comes with it. But the I don't know. I don't want to say the joy that comes with it, but like what I will say is I am glad that I was able to spend a lot of time with my dad before he passed. Like before he passed, it was like me and him riding out, from the time that we found out he had cancer to the time we passed, which was it 6 months? It was less than 6 months because May, June, July, August. So yeah, like less than 6. We found out in May. Actually, we found out right around this time. So this episode is actually being recorded Memorial Day weekend. And so we literally found out around this time in 2019. He died in August 2019. So less than 6 months. But when I tell you, me and him was riding, going to every appointment, doing all of that. So, I am grateful for that time when I was able to spend with him. But it was exhausting. I'm not going to lie. It was exhausting. It was frustrating. There's a lot of emotions that come with it, just a lot of different things. And so I want to just talk about it because you may be like, oh, well, I'm not a caregiver, so I don't need to listen to this episode. However, what I will say is that typically you're kind of thrust into the position of caregiving, or you really need to think about those conversations. So when we were talking about the estate planning, and like I told you guys, like have those conversations with your parents, with your loved ones of what that would look like, because sometimes when you're going to kind of get put into that role, but sometimes you really don't. You just kind of get thrust into that role. And so I want to talk about that, what that looks like. I want to talk about, if you are in the role or if you're going to be in the role, how to kind of be the best caregiver that you are going to be. And, being in that role, I want to give you some tips just to take care of yourself, because it's really important to take care of yourself being a caregiver while you're taking care of someone else. So that's kind of how I want to talk about it. So again, if you are not a caregiver and you're like, I don't want to listen to this episode, I don't feel like it, again, I wouldn't me personally, I would listen because you just never know. Right. And then again, having those conversations with your parents or elders, grandparents, spouses, like what that looks like, because you may be in a role where you have to support your spouse one day or kids or whatever. You just really don't know. So I say all that to say, listen in, kids. So if you look up the role of what a caregiver is, the Oxford definition, it is a family member or paid helper who regularly looks after a child or a sick, elderly or disabled person. And so that is the Oxford edition, like someone who takes care, who is a giver, who takes care, right? So that is the Oxford definition of a caregiver. And as I said before, most people really are kind of like thrown into the role abruptly. Like that's what happened with me. Of course, because we didn't know, like we knew that my dad, he had like kidney issues. That's why he had to get the transplant, like things like that. But when the cancer happened, it just happened so quick, or it just came really quickly with the diagnosis, and it was stage 4, and it just happened really quickly. And so we really didn't have time to have a conversation and say, hey, what does that look like? Because I mean, if you met my dad, like he was screaming the week before. I mean, let me be clear. He was screaming till the minute he died. Okay. Like literally. Okay. However, like he was just full of life and all of these things. And so then he got into, then he was sick, and it just kind of declined very quickly. And so you really, a lot of people get kind of thrown into the role. And so you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, I didn't know anything about being a caregiver because, like, what does that look like? We've never, me and my parents never had that conversation of like, hey, like if I get sick, I want to be put into a home, or I want to be put into this, right? And so these are important conversations when you're doing that estate planning, to have those conversations. Say, hey, what does that look like? If you are in a certain state, do you want to be put into a home? Do you want to stay at home? Like these are real life conversations that you need to have. And especially when it comes to caregiving, because I think people don't have the conversation. Well, excuse me, not I think. I know people don't have a conversation about caregiving, because why would you have a conversation about caregiving? Like nobody is like, you know what? Like, let's have a conversation. If I get into a place and you have to be my caregiver, this is what I want. People just aren't having that conversation. And I get it. I totally get it. Again, the whole premise of this podcast is these are not normal conversations that you're having. And so nobody really has that conversation, but it's important to know and to have these conversations. And so some ways to kind of avoid the woes of being a caregiver and some of that caregiver fatigue that comes is what I've just been saying, is have that conversation early. Have it with your spouse, have it with your parents, have it with your kids. Like, again, for me, and if you're, a millennial listening, again, we talk about our parents aging, have that conversation, say, hey, mom and dad, if something were to happen and you needed me to be a caregiver, what would that look like for you? Or would you even want me to be your caregiver? Would you want someone to come in? Would you want my brother or sister? Would you want, what does that look like for you? So when you're having those conversations, again, around that estate planning, I would just insert those conversations as well. It's like, what does that look like? Would you want me to be your caregiver? Would you want me to bring in like professional help to be your caregiver? Like, would you want to go to assisted living? Like, these are real life conversations that you need to have. And I would have them early. Like nothing has to be wrong for you to have these conversations, because let me tell you, when you try and have the conversation when something's wrong, it's a whole different, there's a lot of emotions that are there that are different. There's a lot of different things that may be missed because there's so much going on around you. And so I would just have those conversations as early as possible. When you're doing that estate planning, like we talked about in the first episode, I would have these caregiver conversations as well. And with that being said, like once you start having those conversations, I would just have some resources available, some caregiver resources, some websites, pamphlets, books, whatever. And, just keep them in your file cabinet. Like you just never know. Of course, things update year by year, but just keep them there, because again, like I said, most of the time people are thrust kind of abruptly into the conversation, into the role. And so having those resources available so that if you are sit into the situation very quickly, it's like, okay, well, let me go over here to my file cabinet. I have a caregiver folder. Here's some resources. Here's some numbers I can call. Here's some support groups, which leads me to my next point of like, when you do get into the role, if you do get into the role, is get some support ASAP. So going and joining those groups, having those conversations with people around you, making sure you're getting that support ASAP. And if you have those resources, then it'll be easier for you when you're getting into that role to be able to get the support you need. Because the thing about it is you can get into like a caregiver support group, and there may have been people who have been doing it for a very long time. And so you're like, oh, well, that's not like, I haven't seen that. That's not been my ministry. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. But it may be one day. And so like being able to have like a space to go and to take care of yourself is really important, because it's again, like I said, it's a beautiful thing to be able to spend time with someone that you love and to be able to take care of them, but it's also very exhausting on your mental capacity. And so it's important to be able to have a space to kind of fall back on, to be able to talk to for people who understand, because of course you can talk to your friends and your family, but they may not fully understand because they're not in that role. Right. And so to be able to go to like different groups and say like, hey, I'm really exhausted. I've been doing it for 2 weeks and I'm exhausted. And somebody will be like, I get it. I've been doing it for 2 years and I'm exhausted. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been in 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 years, a day, like it's exhausting regardless. Right. So make sure, like I say, you have those resources and connect when you get into that role with those groups ASAP. And don't wait to find help when it comes to being a caregiver. So don't wait till you're overwhelmed and you're, feeling that caregiver fatigue and you're tired. Start having the conversations early. And it may even be when you're having those conversations early about what caregiving looks like, is to start involving the people around you who may, be kind of your fallback plan a little bit, right? So have the conversations early with the people around you to say, okay, like, hey, yes, I'm going to be the main caregiver for insert. However, like, I'm going to need some help. Like, maybe on Thursdays, I just need a day, or, in a week when I have a doctor's appointment, I want to, make sure you're able to be there. Like, so can we coordinate our schedules? You know what I mean? Like, have those conversations like early in the game instead of waiting until you're overwhelmed. And I'm speaking from experience for myself, is that I was completely overwhelmed, like with my dad, like a lot of time. And so me and my little sister would switch out a lot at the hospital because there was a situation that I'll get into. Like I said, I'm going to have a full episode and kind of talk about the grief of my parents, because I don't think I've talked about it, but I haven't really, really talked about it. But, there was a time that my dad was in the hospital for it was like a month straight. And me and my little sister were literally there every day, because the first 3 days he was there, like, just in the hospital. It was a hospital we trusted, and something happened. They gave him the wrong medicine and he was like showing symptoms of a stroke and just all this crazy stuff. And once we figured out what it was, that they gave him the wrong medicine, then from that point forward, literally I was there every night, or my little sister was there every night when she could be there. She was in school, I was in school, but we were there. And if we were not there, like during the daytimes, we would have someone there, whether it was like my uncle or his girlfriend at the time, or, like a friend, like somebody was always there with my dad 24/7, because we just lost trust in them, because we left him there for 3 days, for 72 hours. And y'all got this, like, you basically trying to send him into death because y'all gave him the wrong medicine. Oh, no. No. But it did get overwhelming and exhausting. You know what I mean? Because sleeping in a hospital bed, let me tell you, sleeping on that little guest hospital bed is not comfortable. You do that day in and day out. It's not comfortable. You get overwhelmed because now you got to find people to be there. Like, it's just overwhelming. And so have those conversations early. Don't wait till you're overwhelmed, because they will, because it will help. Like, literally, it will definitely help. And then also, have those conversations about, again, so it kind of ties into the first one. I said this a little bit, but have those conversations about senior care facilities, nursing homes, and just ask them, like, what does that look like? And again, once you get into that caregiver role, you can even have these conversations, because they may not want to have the conversation, when you're asking, what is that looking like for caregiving? Because they may not know anything about it, but, start having those conversations. And you may have those conversations throughout the time that you're doing your caregiving to say, like, hey, are you still cool with being at home? Do you want to go to a assisted living facility? Because you know what it is sometimes, like, your family feels like bad. Like, I know my dad was like, this is not how it's supposed to be. My daughter's not supposed to be taking care of me like this. Like, he would have those conversations, right? And so sometimes they feel bad, or they're like, I want you to live your life and you're not able to live, or, just have those conversations of what that looks like for them. And it can be, like I said, once you're having those caregiver conversations early, or it can be like once you actually become a caregiver and start having those conversations of what that looks like. Go and visit different homes, start having those conversations, talk to the, what is it called? Is it the social worker? I guess it's the social worker. I can't remember the name, guys. I'm sorry. But the person at the hospital who handles that, I'm gonna remember it. It's gonna come to me as soon as I finish this episode. But talk to them about some different resources. And when you are, again, you're being thrust into this role, it may happen. Like, consider those legal and financial implications. Again, if you're having these conversations, during the estate planning process, and you already know what it is, right? So again, like if it's going into a assisted living facility, what does that look like? If it's going into a nursing home, what does that look like? These are things that you can put into your will. You can put into writing to say like, hey, if something ever happens to me, I want to go to this nursing home. I have this amount of money set aside, use this, bank account. You know what I'm saying? Like these are things that can happen if you go ahead and plan that estate right. So again, that's why I wanted to bring into this episode how it all ties in together. See what I did there? You like that? Like, it's tying together around here. Okay. We're going to tie things into this season. All right. But again, those are just some things that if you are kind of just put in the situation abruptly, which happens all the time, some ways to kind of avoid the inevitable, I guess, that would typically happen if you are just unprepared. So that's almost like a way to get prepared a little bit, right? I don't know if you're ever really fully prepared to be a caregiver unless you're, a trained professional, obviously, but I think those are just some ways that I know probably would have helped me if I would have been able to have a conversation, if I would have been able to talk to people before I got overwhelmed, if I'd have been able to, have the resources and the help available and discuss the financial, implications, all of those things. I know they definitely would have helped me in the situation because it is exhausting. But if you are a caregiver, I do want to give you some tips on how to be the best caregiver you can be. And of course, these are just like, some generic tips. You obviously know what works best for you and the person who you are taking care of. But I did want to give you some tips. And I actually found these tips on a website called healthandaging.org. It's actually a really dope website. And it talks about, just things that are going to happen obviously while aging. And so they had some really good tips that I did want to write down. And again, these are kind of based off my experiences, but they did have some really good tips on how to be the best caregiver you can be. And so the first one is build confidence in the person you are taking care of, that they will get through it, that they'll get through their treatment, they'll get through their rehab, So I know this is something that I had to just continue to do with my dad, send him some positive affirmations. Like, if we talk about the love languages, like I'm a words of affirmation girl. And so like, I'm really good about speaking life into people. And so, when it says build confidence, just speak life into them. Like, hey, you're going to get through this. You're going to get through your treatment plan, right? Like just, start with small steps. Maybe like encouraging them. Like my dad was at a point where he wasn't really eating like that. And so if we got him these like shakes. And so we were like, okay, well just, drink the shake. And so if he would drink the shake, I'd be like, okay, I see you. All right, drinking that shake. You know what I'm saying? Like just hype him up, right? Like, because sometimes I'll say with cancer, like they can't eat, they get sick, they get, all of these things. So just start with those baby steps and encouraging them and just continue to speak life into them because it's, on the other side of it, right? The person who is being taken care of, you can imagine like just their mental capacity and their mental state of being like, God, like, this person who I love is having to take care of me and I can't eat and I can't do these things. So like start with those small steps and just hype them up and just really just kind of repeat that, what's the word I'm looking for? That positive reinforcement. Is that what it is? Like repeat that or repeated encouragement, I guess. Like just continue to repeat that. Like when they're doing those things, like when they're taking those small steps, when they're eating those few bites of food, when they're taking those few sips, when he's drinking that shake, just encourage them along the way. Continue to speak that life into them, continue to build that confidence of them. And just give them reminders. So when those days, like when my dad was like, oh, I couldn't eat anything, I'm like, but remember the other day you drank that whole shake? Like, you know what I mean? Like just constantly kind of build that confidence up in them. Because what I will say about, and I'm just speaking from cancer, from what I saw and what I've seen, at this point, having 3 people close to me in life who have had cancer, I think a lot of it is about the mindset, and I told people all the time, like, I feel like with my dad, once he heard stage 4, I feel like he couldn't shake that. And as much as he wanted to fight, like, I just feel like he couldn't shake that out of his head. You know what I mean? But I've seen people who have had, stage 1 breast cancer and had really positive mindsets, even through all the chemo, radiation, all that, and they are thriving, right? So I think a lot of it is a mindset. So just making sure that their mindset is always on point and building that confidence in them is really important. The second tip is exercise compassion. And so, some days like just sitting and talking and listening to them is really important. To you, it may not be that deep, but to just sit and listen to them and talk to them and see how they feel, just take their mind away from what's happening, especially if there's a lot of treatment, if they can't walk, if there's a lot of things that they can't do. Just sitting in and talking to them, listen to their stories, listen to their life, listen to whatever it is that they want to talk about. If they want to cry, listening to that, just helping them take their mind off that, right? And just exercising a little compassion for what they're going through. Because again, I know it can be exhausting as a caregiver, but just listening to them can go a long way for the person who you're caring for. The third thing, which I really, I enjoyed it, avoid useless gestures. And so that I love people say this after you lose someone, but I know it's from a genuine place. So let me just say that. Let me know if I can do anything. That's a, you know what I mean? That's a useless, or I don't want to say an empty request, you know what I mean? But, or they call it a useless gesture here. But when someone is sick, and you're saying hey, let me know if I can do anything, they're unlikely going to ask for help. Some people will be like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? But a lot of people who are in that situation where you have to care for them, they already are feeling uncomfortable about it. And so they're definitely not going to be like, hey, can you go get me some milk? Right? So just avoid those useless gestures. Kind of, I think this is where it's important to be aware, awareness, self-awareness, or anything situational awareness. If you see that they're about to run out of soap, just go and get some more soap. You know what I mean? Excuse me. If you see that they need some more bread, just go and get some more bread. If you see that they haven't been to the grocery store in 2 weeks, but you know that they need to eat, go to the grocery store for them. You know what I mean? Avoid those, okay, let me know if I can do anything. Because they're not going to let you know. They're not going to let you know. Well, let me not say that. What I do know is about, I'll say older, what I've seen, the older, Black generation, they're not going to let you know what they need, child. It's just not going to happen. Grandma and them, it's not going to happen, child. It's just, maybe my grandma, she'll be I need to go to the grocery store, you know what I'm saying? But 9 times out of 10, she not going to let you know nothing's wrong for real. And so just avoid those useless gestures and kind of be more aware, situational awareness, see what's going on, and be a doer instead of a, what's the word? Not a sayer. What is it? A doer instead of a speaker. Dang it. I can't remember either way, but just do it. And so that goes into the next point, which is don't hesitate to act. Oh, here it is. Never be afraid to just do or say something, right? So if you see something hey, Bob, I see, Hey, Bob, I see that, you need some more soap. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to grab you some. Is this a type of soap that you like? Did you want a different one? Right? Just letting them know. And again, if you see that they use the same thing over and over, just go ahead and do it. Just get it done. Stop with the, well, I think, no, just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and do it. Because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be appreciative of it. Because they're going to be dang, I really did need that, but I didn't want to bother them. I didn't want to be a burden. So don't hesitate to act. Just do it. Just say it. Just like Nike said, just do it. So this kind of ties into the first one, offer words of encouragement. So that goes back into that speaking life, right? Just think of things that may have helped you through difficult situations. Maybe some people that have maybe been in the same situation or difficult situations. And just encourage them in that and share that with them. Hey, when I go through difficult situations, I love to have this stuffed animal because I squeeze on it and it, makes a sound or it vibrates or the heart beats or whatever, right? Just, sharing that encouragement with them so that they don't feel like they're alone in the process, right? So I think that's really important, is to just although this is a quote unquote different tip, I think it just ties into that first one. It's just to continue to speak life into them, share with them what you do in difficult situations, and just show them that they're not alone in the process. Although they are the ones really like, feeling the things and feeling sick and going through the process, let them know they're not alone in it. Second to last thing. Second to last thing is check in often and show you care. So again, depending on what your caregiving situation is, you may not have to be there all the time. It may not be one of those things, but just check in often. And just let them know, again, they're not alone. So educate yourself as much as you can about their illness, whatever it is that they're going through, the treatment that they're going through. Like, educate yourself as much as you can. So like with my dad, for example, like when he was going through his treatment, obviously I knew a lot from my mom going through the treatment, but we knew that when he was going to go through the chemo or, when he was getting to a place where he wasn't eating like that, that's when we were able to find like different shakes to say, oh, well, these cancer patients have drank this when they weren't able to eat. So we can, do that. Right. And so we were able to educate ourselves to say, these are things that we can do. Or if he's getting to a place where he can't do this on his own, like, to be able to have the resources and tools in place to be able to do that. Right. And so just checking it often and showing you care and educating yourself, to be able to have that conversation and say, hey, like I saw that, sometimes you can get really sick, like during this part of the treatment. So I wanted to bring you these tablets that apparently help, that are all natural or whatever, right? Just to show them that you do care. And the last thing, again, is taking care of yourself. That's the way, like, I think that should be number one. Honestly, the best way to be the best caregiver is to take care of yourself when you are into these situations, right? And so I have some tips that I'm going to get into about that, but that is really, really important. It's just really important to be able to take care of yourself, because you can do all those things. You can send encouragement. You can, speak life into them. You can be compassionate. You can do and say and not, be just somebody who's just there. But it is really important to take care of yourself. And I really think that's the best way you can be the caregiver. And so I'm actually going to get into some tips. I'm going to talk about what it looks like for caregiver stress and get into some tips. But I'm actually going to pay some bills real quick because mama got bills to pay. So we're going to get into the break real quick, and then I will be right back to talk about those tips. This week's episode is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it is free. That means no monthly subscriptions, no hidden fees. It is free 99. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So you don't have to buy all this equipment that I decided to buy. You can do it right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. So it's so easy for me to upload an episode, and it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. And you can actually make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And let's get into the show. All right, let's get into these tips. But some signs of caregiver stress or caregiver fatigue is what it's often called. Is feeling overwhelmed or constantly worried about something, feeling tired often, getting too much or not enough sleep. In my case, I was not getting enough sleep at all. Gaining or losing weight. Let's put a pin in that. Okay. This is about to be so rude. So here's the thing. Anytime I get stressed, I never get this losing weight part. People be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed, I lost weight. Why is that not my ministry? Who I need to talk to about the stress police about losing weight? Because that ain't never my ministry. Okay? I'm on the gaining weight side. The disrespect of it all. Who do I need to speak to? God? Is that you? Who I need to talk to? Let me stop. Back to, now we're back. Great. Gaining or losing weight. Becoming easily irritated or angry, which was me, losing interest in activities you enjoy, feeling sad, physical ailments, headache, getting sicker more, like colds and stuff, and substance abuse. So those are some signs of caregiver fatigue or caregiver stress that it's time for you to take a break, or you're not taking care of yourself well enough during this process, if any of those things are happening to you during the caregiving process. All right. So let's get into these tips. So I got these tips from, it's a network. It's called Caregiver Action Network. And they gave some, like I said, gave some good tips that I can agree with, because these are things that I had to do or things that I did not do that I wish I would have done during the process. So tip number one that they gave is seek support from other caregivers. So that goes back to that first thing that I was originally talking about is, finding those support networks of caregivers to know that you are not alone. And I'm not saying go and sit in a room and like, hi, my name is Loryn. Hi, Loryn. Like, it's not like, it doesn't have to be like an AA meeting. You know what I'm saying? But like, just to be able to say like, I've been doing this caregiving for a month and I'm exhausted. I've been at the hospital every day. Like, I'm still in school. Like, I'm still, in my 30s, and I want to be able to hang out with my friends, but like, I don't even know what to say to them, or I feel guilty about going out and hanging out because my dad's in the hospital. Because these are real life things that happen to me. Like, I would be guilty. My sister came in town one week while my dad was in the hospital, and I was going to a concert, and she came in town and stayed with him while I was in the hospital. And I felt terrible that I was out at a concert having fun and my dad is in the hospital fighting for his life. I felt terrible. And I got so incredibly drunk that night because, again, it talked about the substance abuse or using like alcohol or drugs or something like that, because I felt so bad. So I got like so drunk and just like cried and was like, oh my God, like how dare I be out here having the time of my life, and my dad is in the hospital and my sister is in there, like just all this crazy stuff, right? And I didn't seek the support of others or other groups to say like, hey, it's okay. You have a life outside of this. You are a person outside of this, right? So that is really important, to seek that support from other caregivers to know that you are not alone. The second thing is to take care of your own health, right? And not just mental health, but I think this one specifically is speaking about physical health. So, yes, we know you're strong. We know you're strong, right? But for you to be able to take care of your own health, it's for so what does it say here? So that you can be strong enough to take care of your loved one. Because again, like, I'll just say a specific example is that my dad had gotten so skinny that he was not able to hold himself up at one point, right? And there was a time specifically that he was trying to get in his hospital bed and he was sliding, like his socks were sliding across the floor. And I had to literally pick him up and put him in the bed, like literally pick my dad up, who was a 5'11" man. I don't remember what he was at the time, but he had lost so much weight. He was super skinny, and pick him up and put in the bed. I am like 5'3", you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm small. I'm a small person. But if I wasn't going to the gym, if I wasn't doing those things, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I'd have been in there like, nurse, help me. You know what I mean? But I had to do that in that moment, to be able to pick him up and put him in the bed. So you have to take care of your own health, not only for that, but you just never know. Like, sometimes when you're a caregiver, you do have to pick them up. Like, we would have to help him to the bathroom and things like that. Like, these are things that are important, and you do have to be strong enough to be able to do that physically, right? And also, just for your own, so you don't get like colds and things like that. They always talk about exercise and how it helps, obviously, like, combat like those little things. I mean, we are in a world of COVID. So really making sure you take care of yourself, your vitamins and all that is way, way, way important. It should have been important before, but it's definitely way more important now than ever. Accept offers of help. So again, this goes back to, like I said, in that moment when I went to the concert and my sister was like, well, I'm in town, I'll just stay. Like, it's a problem, right? But I was feeling so guilty about it. Like, just accept those offers of help. So suggest specific things people can do to help you. So if you know that someone's ministry might not be to be able to be there and see that person like that, but they're like, you know what? I can cook meals. I can bring you food. Like, I have a really good friend who would bring me food. She lived right around the corner from the hospital, and she would literally text me and be like, hey, did you eat today? And I'd be like, no, I don't think so. And she would say, what do you want? Like, hey, go ahead and order it. I'll go ahead and pick it up. And she would do that. And she would go pick me up food, or she would say like, hey, here's a restaurant. Tell me what you want on the menu. Like, she would literally send me a restaurant and say, what do you want on the menu? And she would just bring me the food. Right. So, sometimes accepting help, I know it's not a simple thing, especially if you haven't listened to the episode on perfectionism that I had last season. I talked about that, like accepting help and how it can be kind of like I don't want to do that. Right. Go back and listen to that. But accepting offers of help does not make you weak. It doesn't make you less strong. It doesn't make you less of an important person in that person's life. It's just helping you be the best caregiver you can be to that person by taking care of yourself and accepting offers of help from other people, right? And so the fourth thing is to learn how to communicate effectively with the doctors. I'm laughing about this because me and my sister, I know those doctors were so tired. Let me get close to my tired. They were so tired of us, okay? Because my sister at the time was in nursing school, right? So she's learning everything. If you ever talk to my little sister and she starts talking about medical stuff, I'm always like layman terms, because she will go into the coagulation of the disease, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, give it to me in terms that I can understand, that I can communicate with this doctor, right? And so that's when we find out about the medicine that they gave him wrong that was giving him symptoms of a stroke. Ever since then, we were on, when I tell you we was on their ass, we were on them, okay? Like asking questions, like literally recording conversations. I had a whole notebook that would always stay in the room that we were writing down everything. If my sister was there, I know they were so over it. If me and my sister was in the room, they were like, we not coming into that room today, because we had all the questions, because I got questions, because clearly y'all did it wrong the first time. So now I got questions, right? And so we had to learn what was best for us. Like, there's no reason to be rude. Like, we were never rude to them, but we did have several questions because obviously we left him in your care for 72 hours and something went wrong. So now the best way for us to be able to make sure that our father is good is to have a notebook in the room, is to record these conversations, is to ask questions, right? Is to understand the process of what's happening. Hey, what is that you're putting into the IV? Okay, what does that do? Okay, what is that going to help? Okay, what's the next process? Well, why does that process have to happen for this process, right? And I know it could be annoying, and I'm sure maybe if a doctor or somebody else out here listening, it may be annoying to you, but you have to understand that I didn't go to medical school. I didn't learn all these terms, but what I do know is that something happened wrong with my dad early in the game. And so now I have to ask questions and understand what the process is. And so that was our way to effectively communicate with the doctor the things that were important to us. And we said that, like, listen, like, moving forward, if there's anything that needs to be changed or added, you need to have a conversation with me or my sister. And, really what it was, if they were having a conversation with me, I would immediately call my sister and say, hey, this is the medicine they're thinking about adding. What do you think about this? Because she obviously had the medical knowledge to understand, like, no, or yes, right? But they were not able to literally change or add anything unless it was an emergency situation without having the conversation with one of us, right? Because again, that was just our way of having to communicate with them because of a mistake that was made early in the game. So however you need to effectively communicate with that doctor being the caregiver for that person, right? And again, it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't be any of that. But if you take the time to learn and to understand the illness that they're going through, and like I said, the treatments, then now you can have better conversations with those medical doctors. Because at the end of the day, like, I have no problem with doctors, nurses. I love, like, again, my sister's a nurse. Like, a lot of the doctors who took care of my dad were great, but then there were some of them who were not great, right? And so, like, you just have to be an advocate for whoever your person is that you're taking care of, right? And I hate that that's what it is, but sometimes you do have to advocate for your family. We had to advocate for my dad, and I always think about, like, if we weren't there to advocate for him, what would have happened? If my sister didn't have the medical knowledge that she did, what would have happened, right? I think about that all the time. So, just learn how to effectively communicate with the doctors in the best way you know how. And I think the best way is just educating yourself on the process and asking questions. Because at the end of the day, they can ask questions, or you can ask questions, because that's just what we did. All we would do was ask questions as to why this was the process, what was going to happen next, why the process looked like this, what this medicine was going to do, right? So we could better understand what was happening with our father, right? And so the fifth thing is caregiving is hard work, so take respite breaks. Respite, I think that's how you say it. So basically, what respite care is, it is provide short-term relief for caregivers. It can be an afternoon, it can be days, it can be weeks. It's essentially just bringing someone else in to help. Again, like I said, when my sister came into town and she took the night shift, for my dad, that time that she was there. Or like I said, if I needed to go home, if I was at the hospital for 2 days straight and I need to go home, like I would, ask my uncle to come or his girlfriend, or she would stay for the night. Like, just taking those breaks that you needed for yourself. It's really important. They can be planned, especially if it's gonna be like a long thing. Like if this caregiving is going to be, for some months, you may plan it to say, hey, I'm gonna take a break from this week, excuse me, this weekend, right? And so now to bring in somebody, and so that's coming up. So again, it could be an afternoon, it could be days, it can be weeks, but make sure you're taking those breaks for yourself, because it's really, really important when you're getting overwhelmed, when you're getting that caregiver fatigue. And actually, I would even do it before you even get to that point of stress, of that caregiver fatigue. Honestly, like I would go ahead and kind of like plan it in there, almost like vacation days for yourself, right? I would honestly plan it in there. If you know that you're going to be caregiving for someone for a long period of time, even if you don't know, if you're like, okay, like this person has surgery coming up and I know that their recovery time is 8 to 10 weeks. This weekend, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to bring in a professional. I'm going to bring in a cousin. I'm going to bring in, a sister, brother, something like that. So I would go ahead and just plan it out, if you can, in advance, to make sure you're not reaching that point of overwhelm or fatigue and you're feeling some type of way, or you're really not able to enjoy the break like you need to. Number 6 is watch out for changes in your mental health and get help if needed. So I think it's really important when you're going through the process to go through therapy simultaneously. This was something that I did not do. And I look back and I wish I would have done, because I think it would have helped me a lot. Because like I said, I was doing that. I was in school. I was trying to find a job, just trying to live, honestly, in my 30s, trying to spend time with my friends. All of these different things were happening, and I really was struggling mentally, and then obviously he passed after that, and then I got into therapy. But I would say my tip to kind of piggyback off this is to be in therapy simultaneously. Like if you're feeling those moments, like you're like, dang, like I feel really depressed today, or if you're having suicidal ideation thoughts or anything like that, like get that help immediately. And not necessarily with support groups. I would go again to like a therapist. If you can do it simultaneously, I totally would. If not, if you start seeing some changes in your mental health, go and speak to someone immediately to get the help that you need. That's really, really important, guys, because it can happen. And I'm telling you, it can happen because it happened to me. Number 7 is be open to new technologies that can help you care for your loved one. So again, I think that goes back to just educating yourself, right? And asking questions. And so if a doctor comes in and says, hey, we have this new technology that can, I don't know, target the specific spot where the ailment, I said illness, where the ailment is, or where the cancer is, ask questions, research it, like have conversations with them, right? But be open to it. Like, I think that was the thing, is that we were open to whatever could help. We just had questions about it, again, because of our experiences. But even if we didn't have that experience, I think we would still have questions, because it's like, yeah, we have this new technology and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I got questions though. So tell me, like, about this new technology. What is the effective rate? How many people has it been conducted on? What is the recovery time? What does it look like if this happens? You know what I mean? Like, just have questions, be open to it, research it, have questions, but anything that could help, be open to it. And again, if the person who you're caregiving for, they may be like, I'm not with it, because my dad, insert my dad, have the conversation, say, hey, Dad, I've done this research, or hey, Bob, I've done this research. These are the things that I've seen. I think you should be open to it. I think it can really help, and have those conversations with them to reassure them that it'll be okay, but you need to be okay with it as well, right? So be open to that. Number 8 is organize medical information so it's up to date and easy to find. So again, I think that goes back to that estate planning. Like Stephanie said, it's just having your stuff in order. So like with my dad, there was an app. Yeah, I think there was an app that we had that had all of his medicines, how often he took them, I believe when they were prescribed, like, I believe it was an app. And if I can think of it or if I can find it, I still have his phone. So if I can find it, I'm going to post it on my social media. So follow me at this Two Shows Like podcast. I'm going to post the app where you can find, where you can put all of that. I can't remember the app, but like I said, I'm going to try and open his phone and see if I can find the app that had all that information. So it's all in one place. Or, you know, if you're not like a super like techie person, totally fine. Again, like Stephanie said, have it all in one place, and just make sure that everything is organized when you start taking it. I have like a whole medical folder in my file cabinet, and it literally says all the medicines I've taken. So any medicine, prescription medicine that I have taken, I've kept like the little, I guess the little tear out or pamphlet, whatever that comes on the front that has all the prescription information, all of that. I have it all in one place. Because if something ever happens and, you know, there's some lawsuit, oh, Loryn took that medicine, got it. You know what I mean? Like, I already know what it is. So make sure all of that stuff is up to date and all in one place, because every time we went to a new doctor, we had to fill all that over and over and over again. And me and my dad would talk about it all the time. Like, we just don't understand how in the years that we are in, I'll say now, at the time it was 2019, like how these computer systems are not talking to each other. Like, I get like there's different hospitals and different hospital systems, but they all have the same like system. It's the same name. It's just in a different hospital. So we just didn't understand how they weren't talking to each other, but we would literally have to go in and fill out the same forms every single time. And it is exhausting. So to have it all in one place is much, much easier. Number 9, again, I know we keep saying this over and over, but it is very important to make sure the legal documents are in order. So make sure that the power of attorney is in order. Make sure the medical directive is in order. Make sure your will is in order. Make sure your living trust is in order, your revocable living trust. And if you haven't listened to episode 1 of season 3 with Stephanie Anderson, I need you to go back and listen to it, because you're probably like, what are you talking about? I need you to go back and listen to that episode, because she talks about a lot of different amazing things when it comes to your estate planning and when it comes to just making sure you're good and things that you can have. So I want you to go back and listen to that episode, then come back. Finish this episode, but then like this episode will make a little more sense to you when I'm saying like why it's important to have those legal things in order. Because again, for my dad, we had his power of attorney and his medical directive literally a week before he passed is when we got it done. Because I kept asking him, and I was like, Dad, where's your will? Do you have this? Do you have this? He was like, I'm tired. When I get home, we'll do it. And he never came home, right? He went to the hospital. He never came home. And so we were never able to do those things. So make sure to have all of those documents in order. And number 10, which I think is the most important one, is give yourself credit for doing the best that you can in one of the toughest jobs that there is. Being a caregiver is not for the faint of heart. Let me tell you, it is not the most rewarding job, I guess I'll say. It is not the easiest thing to deal with. It is exhausting. It is mentally tough. It is a lot of things, but like I said, it's beautiful because you get to spend time with your loved one, but you also get to see maybe a uglier side of your loved one that you wouldn't prefer. You see your loved one in a place where you don't want to see them at. But it's beautiful to be able to be there and to spend time with them and to love on them and to encourage them and to take care of them. I think it's one of the most selfless acts that you can do is to be a caregiver. And so kudos to those who are listening who are caregivers. You are doing wonderful. You are the bomb. Do people still say that? You are the bomb. You are everything that God has destined you to be. You are going to reap so much more than you sow by doing that. I think it's just a really, really beautiful act to do. And as tiring and exhausting as it is really a beautiful moment to be able to have and to spend time. I wouldn't take back any of those 4 months that I got to spend with my dad. You know what I mean? And we would argue so much during that time because I'm just like, Dad, why won't you just do this? Why won't you just listen to the doctor? Why won't you just answer my question? Why? Right? But just being able to spend time with him, whether I was watching him decline or not, being able to spend time with him during that time, I wouldn't take back for the world. I got to spend so much time with him. Like I said, it was me and him rolling to them doctor's appointments. We were in the hospital every night, whether we were up at 2 a.m., talking about how uncomfortable he was, to literally me watching him take his last breath. Like those moments, I won't take back for the world. I always tell people, like, I would rather be here arguing about dad taking care of him than not have him here at all. Right. So it's just one of those things that I think is beautiful. And it may happen to you. Right. And you may think like, no, that's never going to happen. I'm never going to be a caregiver, but it may happen to you. Or even if you're not a caregiver, you may know someone in a situation who is a caregiver, and maybe, this is a way to support them, to say, hey, like, listen to this episode, or these are some things that I'm thinking could help you. Is there a way that I can support you in your caregiving journey, right? It's not necessarily about you being the caregiver. It may be you supporting someone in the caregiver journey, whether they are a caregiver or the one who's being cared for, right? So I just think it's really important. Again, I wanted to tie this episode into Stephanie's episode about like estate planning and caregiving and just the importance of everything of it. Again, grief is just one of those things. It's wild, right? It's wild, and it's different. It's unpredictable. It's all of those different things. And so I knew it was important to have this conversation, after we talked about estate planning, to talk about being a caregiver, because all of these things are going to come into play, maybe one day for you. And I want to make sure that you have the resources necessary, that you have the support necessary, that you have the understanding to know what all of these things mean. And so, as I always say, as you're going through the process, if you are a caregiver, if you are going to become a caregiver, or if you're going to be the one who is going to be cared for, if you know someone who is a caregiver and you want to support them, as I always say, be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, because if you don't, who will? That's it, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to another week's episode. If you haven't already, follow me on social media at This Too Shall Suck Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, follow, and share with your family and friends. If you want to know more about me, you can check out my website at thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. And feel free to send me any questions or topics you want to have, or tell me about your caregiving journey. I love when you guys send me messages, and I love to hear, that an episode touched you. So I love that so much. You can send me that at hello@thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. This episode and all episodes are produced by Mike Sick, and our original music is produced by Jimmy Samaj. As always, I love you guys. I'm sending you love and light in your life because you deserve it. I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah.